Hear the sage as his song descends like heaven's rain or tears, and washes the years, the dust of the many stories from the high tail of the dragon lance. For in ages deep, past memory and word, in the first blush of the world when the 3 moons rose from the lap of the forest, dragons, terrible and great, made war on this world of Kryn. Yet out of the darkness of dragons, out of our cries for light in the blank face of the black moon soaring, a banked light flared in Solamnia, a night of truth and of power, who called down the gods themselves and forged the mighty dragon lance, piercing the soul of dragonkind, driving the shade of their wings from the brightening shores of Kryn. Thus Huma, knight of Solamnia, Lightbringer, first lancer, followed his light to the foot of the Kalkist mountains, to the stone feet of the gods, to the crouched silence of their temple. He called down the lance makers. He took on their unspeakable power to crush the unspeakable evil, to thrust the coiling darkness back down the tunnel of the dragon's throat. Paladine, the great god of good, shone at the side of Huma, strengthening the lance of his strong right arm, and Huma, ablaze in 1,000 moons, banished the queen of darkness, banished the swarm of her shrieking hosts back to the senseless kingdom of death, where their curses swooped upon nothing and nothing deep below the brightening land. Thus ended in thunder the age of dreams and began the age of might, when Istar, kingdom of light and truth, arose in the east, where minarets of white and gold spired to the sun and to the sun's glory, announcing the passing of evil, and Istar, who mothered and cradled the long summers of good, shone like a meteor in the white skies of the just. Yet in the fullness of sunlight the king-priest of Istar saw shadows. At night he saw the trees as things with daggers, the streams blackened and thickened under the silent moon.
He searched books for the paths of Huma, for scrolls, signs, and spells, so that he too might summon the gods, might find their aid in his holy aims, might purge the world of sin. Then came the time of dark and death as the gods turned from the world. A mountain of fire crashed like a comet through Istar. The city split like a skull in the flames. Mountains burst from once fertile valleys. Seas poured into the graves of mountains. The deserts sighed on abandoned floors of the seas. The highways of Kryn erupted and became the paths of the dead. Thus began the age of despair. The roads were tangled. The winds and the sandstorms dwelt in the husks of cities. The plains and mountains became our home. As the old gods lost their power, we called to the blank sky into the cold, dividing gray to the ears of new gods. The sky is calm, silent, unmoving. We have yet to hear their answer. Flint Fireforge collapsed on a moss-covered boulder. His old dwarven bones had supported him long enough and were unwilling to continue without complaint. "I should never have left," Flint grumbled, looking down into the valley below. He spoke aloud, though there was no sign of another living person about. Long years of solitary wandering had forced the dwarf into the habit of talking to himself. He slapped both hands on his knees. "And I'll be damned if I'm ever leaving again," he announced vehemently. Warmed by the afternoon sun, the boulder felt comfortable to the ancient dwarf, who had been walking all day in the chill autumn air. Flint relaxed and let the warmth seep into his bones, the warmth of the sun and the warmth of his thoughts, because he was home. "You'll never learn, dwarf," a distant voice answered him. "Not if you live to be 248. Dropping the wood, the dwarf's hand moved with calm assurance from the dagger to the handle of his axe as he peered down the path. The voice sounded familiar, the first familiar voice he'd heard in a long time, but he couldn't place it. Flint squinted into the setting sun. He thought he saw the figure of a man striding up the path. Standing, Flint drew back into the shadow of a tall pine to see better. "Tanis?" said Flint hesitantly as the man neared. "The same." The newcomer's bearded face split in a wide grin. He held open his arms, and before the dwarf could stop him, engulfed Flint in a hug that lifted him off the ground. The dwarf clasped his old friend close for a brief instant, then, remembering his dignity, squirmed and freed himself from the half-elf's embrace. "Well, you've learned no manners in 5 years," the dwarf grumbled. "Still no respect for my age or my station. Hoisting me around like a sack of potatoes." Flint peered down the road. "I hope no one who knows us saw us." "I doubt there are many who'd remember us," Tanis said, his eyes studying his stocky friend fondly. Time doesn't pass for you and me, old dwarf, as it does for humans. 5 years is a long time for them, a few moments for us. Then he smiled. You haven't changed.
Are we going to stand here all night smelling the cooking fires, or are we going to go into town and get some dinner? Go, Tanis waved. The two started down the path together, Tanis's long strides forcing the dwarf to take 2 steps to his one. Though it had been many years since they had journeyed together, Tanis unconsciously slowed his pace, while Flint unconsciously quickened his.